A calm sea, a bold dream, and a decision that changes everything. From York to Africa to a deadly storm, this is Robinson Crusoe in clear, easy English, so you can learn while you're on the edge of your seat. Chapter 1. My First Trip to Sea. Before I begin my story, I want to tell you a little about myself. I was born in 1632 in the city of York, in the north of England. My father was from Germany, but he moved to England to live and work. Later, he married my mother, who was English. Her family name was Robinson, so when I was born, they named me Robinson after her. My father worked hard and was successful in business. He sent me to a good school and wanted me to get a good job, marry, and live a quiet, comfortable life. But I didn't want that kind of life. I wanted to travel and have adventures. I want to be a sailor and go to sea, I told my parents. They were very unhappy when they heard this. Please don't go, my father said. You won't be happy, my son. Life at sea is dangerous and hard. Because I loved my father and didn't want to make him sad, I tried to forget my dream. But I couldn't stop thinking about the sea. About a year later, I met a friend whose father owned a ship. We're sailing to London tomorrow, he said. Why don't you come with us? And so, on September 1st, 1651, I went to Hull. The next day we left for London. After a few days there was a strong wind. The sea became wild and rough, and the ship went up and down like a toy. I was very sick and very afraid. "Oh, I don't want to die!" I cried. If I live, I'll go home and never go to sea again. But the next day the wind stopped, and the sea was calm and beautiful once more. "Well, Bob," my friend laughed, "how do you feel now? That little wind wasn't too bad?" "What? That was terrible," I said. He laughed again. "That wasn't a real storm, just a small wind. Forget it. Come and have a drink." After a few drinks, I felt better and forgot my promise to go home. I didn't want my friends or family to laugh at me. I stayed in London for a while, but soon I wanted to go to sea again. When the captain of a ship asked me to join him on a trip to Guinea in Africa, I agreed. At first everything went well, but soon I became seasick again. Then, near the Canary Islands, a Turkish pirate ship chased us. These pirates were known as thieves of the sea. After a long, hard fight, our ship lost, and we became prisoners. The Turkish captain took us to Salé in Morocco, where he planned to sell us as slaves. But in the end, he decided to keep me for himself, and took me to his home. That day, my life changed completely. I was no longer a free man. I was now a slave, and the Turkish captain was my master. Chapter 2. Escape along the African coast. For 2 long years I lived as a slave. I often thought about escaping, but it never seemed possible. Every day and night I dreamed of freedom. My master liked to go fishing in a small boat, and he always took me with him. Another man named Moley and a young boy also went with us. One day my master said, "Some of my friends want to go fishing tomorrow. Get the boat ready." So we packed food and drink onto the boat and waited the next morning. When my master arrived, he was alone. "My friends don't want to go today," he said, "but you can go with Moley and the boy. Catch some fish for our supper." "Yes, master," I said quietly, though inside I was excited. Maybe I can escape now, I thought. As soon as my master left, we sailed out to sea. For a while we fished quietly. Then I moved behind Moley and pushed him into the water. "Swim to the shore," I shouted. "Go on or I'll shoot." There were guns on the boat because my master used them to shoot birds. I quickly grabbed one. Moley tried to swim after us, but I called out, "Go back to the shore. I won't hurt you if you stay away, but if you come near, I'll shoot you." He turned and swam back as fast as he could. Then I looked at the boy. "Jury," I said, "if you help me, I'll be your good friend. But if you don't, I'll push you into the sea too." Jury quickly agreed. "I'll go with you everywhere," he said. I wanted to sail to the Canary Islands, but our boat was small and I was afraid to go too far from the coast. So we stayed close to the land, sailing south for many days. We had very little water and were often hungry. The land near the coast was full of wild animals, so we were frightened. Still, we had to go on shore sometimes to find water. Once I shot a large, wild animal with my gun. I didn't know what it was, but its meat was good to eat. For about 10 or 12 days, we kept sailing down the coast of Africa. One day we saw people on the shore, wild-looking people who didn't seem friendly. By then we had almost no food left and we needed help. We were scared, but we had no choice. We went to the shore. The people were also afraid of us, probably because they had never seen white men before. We couldn't speak their language, so we used our hands and faces to show that we were hungry. They brought us food but moved away quickly. We carried the food to our boat while they watched. I wanted to thank them, but I had nothing to give. Just then, 2 big wild cats came down from the hills. They looked like leopards. The people shouted in fear. Quickly, I took my gun and shot one of the animals. The other ran away into the mountains. The loud noise and smoke from my gun scared the people, but they were happy that the wild cat was dead. I gave them the meat from the animal, and they gave us more food and water in return. Now we had enough to continue our journey. After 11 more days, we saw the Cape Verde Islands, but there was no wind, so our boat could not move closer. We waited, hoping for help. Suddenly, Jury shouted, "Look, a ship!" We both called and waved, but the ship didn't see us. Then I remembered that the gun made a lot of smoke. I fired it into the air, and soon the ship turned toward us. When we came aboard, the Portuguese captain listened to my story carefully. He was kind and said he would take us to Brazil. He didn't want any payment. "No," he said when I tried to give him money. "Perhaps one day someone will help me when I am in need." He gave me money for the boat and for Jury as well. At first I didn't want to sell Jury, after everything we went through together. But Jury was happy to stay with the captain, who promised, "After 10 years, he will be a free man." 3 weeks later, we arrived in Brazil. I said goodbye to the captain and to Jury, and went to begin a new life in a strange new land. Chapter 3. The Storm and the Shipwreck. I lived in Brazil for several years and worked very hard. After some time, I became quite rich. But my life was quiet and I started to feel bored. One day some friends came to me and said, "We are going to Africa to trade. Come with us. We will all become rich after this trip." How foolish I was. I already had a good, easy life in Brazil, but I agreed to go. So in the year 1659, I went to sea once again. At first, everything went well, but after some days, a terrible storm began. The wind and rain did not stop for 12 days. The sea was wild, and 3 sailors were lost in the water. Soon the ship had big holes in its sides. "We are going to die this time," I said to myself. Then, early one morning, one of the sailors shouted, "Land! I see land!" But just a moment later, the ship hit a sandbank under the sea and could not move. The strong waves began to break the ship apart. We had no time to lose. Quickly, we put a small boat into the water and left the ship. But the sea was too rough. Huge waves threw our little boat up and down. We tried hard to stay together, but after half an hour a giant wave hit us and turned the boat over. I went under the water, and when I came up again, all my friends were gone. I was alone. That day I was lucky. The sea carried me toward the shore. Around me were only great walls of water. but suddenly I felt the ground under my feet. Another wave lifted me and threw me up onto the beach. I fell down on the wet sand, too weak to move. When I opened my eyes, I was thankful to be alive. Slowly I stood up and walked farther away from the sea. I looked back and saw our ship broken in the water. There was no one else alive. I was the only survivor. Night came, and I was cold and tired. I didn't want to sleep on the beach because I was afraid of wild animals. So I climbed up into a tall tree and stayed there all night, hoping that the morning would bring some new hope. Chapter 4. A New Life on the Island. When morning came, the storm had passed and the sea was calm again. I looked out towards the water and, to my surprise, I saw our ship. It was still there and still in one piece. I think I can swim to it, I said to myself. So I went down to the beach and began to swim. After some time, I reached the ship and swam around it, looking for a way to get on board. At last I found a hole in the side and managed to climb inside, though it was not easy. There was a lot of water inside the ship, but the sand under the sea was holding it still. The back part of the ship was high above the water, and I was very thankful for that because most of the food was there. I was very hungry, so I ate something right away. Then I decided to take some food and tools back to the shore, but how could I carry them? I searched the ship and found some long pieces of wood. I tied them together with rope to make a kind of raft. Then I gathered everything I could find that would help me survive. A large box of rice, salted meat, and hard ship's bread. I also took knives, tools, ropes, some of the ship's sails, paper, pens, books, and 7 guns. I made a small sail for my raft and began to move carefully towards the shore. It was hard to keep my things from falling into the sea, but in the end, I got everything safely onto the beach. Now I needed a safe place to keep my supplies. There were some small hills nearby, so I decided to build a home on one of them. I climbed to the top of the highest hill and looked around. My heart sank. I realized I was on an island. There were 2 smaller islands a few miles away, but beyond them there was nothing, only the endless sea. After some walking, I found a small cave in the side of a hill. The land in front of it was flat and dry, a good place to make a shelter. I used the ship's sails, ropes, and wood to build myself a tent. It took a lot of hard work, but soon I had a fine home. The cave behind the tent was perfect for storing my food, so I called it my kitchen. That night, I slept in my new house for the first time. The next day, I began to worry about dangers. Were there wild animals on the island? Or maybe wild people? I didn't know, but I felt very afraid. So I decided to build a strong fence to protect myself. I cut down young trees and placed them in the ground in a half-circle around my tent. I tied them together with the ship's ropes until the fence was thick and strong as a stone wall. Nobody could get over it, through it, or around it. Building all of this was very hard work, and I needed more tools. So I decided to go back to the ship. I returned 12 times and brought back more things each time. But soon after my 12th visit, a great storm came again. When I looked out the next morning, the ship was gone. When I saw the empty sea, I felt very sad. Why am I alive when all my friends are dead? I asked myself. What will happen to me, alone on this island, with no one to help me? Will I ever escape? But then I told myself that I was lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky to have food, tools, and strength. I knew my island must be somewhere off the coast of South America, and ships did not often come this way. I will be here for a long time, I said. So, on a long piece of wood, I cut these words. I came here on 30th of September, 1659. After that, I made a small cut for each new day, so I would never forget how long I had lived on my island. Chapter 5. Learning to live alone. I still needed many things to make my life easier. Well, I said to myself, if I need them, I'll just have to make them. So I worked every single day. First, I wanted to make my cave bigger. I carried out stones one by one, and after many days of hard work, I had a large cave in the side of the hill. Then I made a table and a chair, which took a long time to finish. I also built shelves and places to keep my food, tools, and guns. Each time I needed wood, I had to cut down a tree. It was slow, heavy work, but during those months I became very good at using my tools. I had no need to hurry. I had all the time in the world. Every day I went outside with my gun. Sometimes I shot wild animals and had meat to eat. But when night came, I had to stop working because I had no light. I couldn't read or write in the dark. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. Then I learned how to use the fat from dead animals to make candles, and at last, I had light at night. The weather on my island was often hot, with strong storms and heavy rain. The next June, it rained almost every day, and I couldn't go outside much. I also became sick for some weeks, but slowly I got better. When I was strong again, I went hunting. The first time I killed a wild animal, and the second time I caught a big turtle. I lived on the island for 10 months before I went to explore other parts of it. During those months I worked hard on my cave, house, and fence. Then I was ready to see what else was on the island. I followed a small river and found open ground with no trees. Later, I came to a forest full of fruit trees. I picked many fruits and left them in the sun to dry so I could keep them for a long time. That night, I slept in a tree again. The next morning, I continued my journey and reached a wide, green valley full of flowers, birds, and animals. I realized that my house was on the worst side of the island. But I didn't want to move. It was my home now. I stayed away for 3 days, and then went back. But I often returned to the greener side. My days passed quickly. Every month I learned something new. But I also had problems and accidents. One day a terrible storm came. The heavy rain made the roof of my cave fall down, and it almost killed me. I had to rebuild it using stronger wood. By then I had plenty of food. I cooked it over a fire or dried it in the sun. So even during the rainy months when I couldn't hunt, I always had meat. I learned to make pots to store food, but they broke easily. I wanted to make strong ones that could stand fire. Many times I failed. Then one day I made new pots and put them in a very hot fire. They changed color but did not break. When they cooled, they were hard and strong. That night, I was so happy I could boil water for the first time. Later, I was lucky again. I found a small bag that we once used on the ship to feed the chickens. There was still a little grain inside, and some of it fell to the ground. A month later, I saw green plants growing there. After 6 months, I had my first small field of corn. I was so excited. Maybe now I could make my own bread. But it was not as easy as I thought. Making bread from corn takes a lot of work. Most people eat bread, but don't know how much effort it takes to grow it and prepare it. It took me a full year to make and eat my first loaf of bread. Even as I worked, I never stopped thinking about escape. From the other side of the island, I could see more islands in the distance. Maybe I can reach them with a boat, I said. Maybe one day I can return to England. So I decided to build a boat. I cut down a big tree and began to carve a hole in it to make a canoe. It took 6 months, but when I finished, I realized I had made a mistake. The canoe was too big and heavy to move. I pushed, pulled, and tried everything, but it wouldn't move an inch. I felt so foolish and very sad for a long time. That happened in my 4th year on the island. 2 years later, I built a smaller canoe, but I didn't try to escape with it. The boat was too small for a long trip, and I didn't want to die at sea. The island had become my home, not my prison. I was simply glad to be alive. A few years later, I made another canoe on the other side of the island and built a second house there. Now I had 2 homes. My life stayed busy from morning until night. There was always something to do or make. I learned to sew clothes from animal skins. They looked strange, but they kept me dry when it rained. I kept food and tools at both houses. I also caught wild goats and built fields with high fences to keep them in. The goats grew tame and took food from my hands. Soon I had milk to drink every day. I also worked hard in my cornfields. And so, the years passed by, one after another, quietly but busily, as I lived alone on my island. Chapter 6. A Footprint. One year something strange and frightening happened. I often walked along the beach, and one day I saw a mark in the sand. I went closer and stopped in sudden surprise. It was a footprint, the print of a man's foot. Who could it be? I looked around and listened, but there was nothing. I grew more and more afraid. Maybe this man was one of those wild people who killed and ate other men. I looked for more prints, but there were none. I turned and hurried home. There is someone on my island, I thought. Perhaps he knows about me. Perhaps he is watching me now from behind a tree. Perhaps he wants to kill me. That night I could not sleep. The next morning I got all my guns ready and put more wood and young trees around my house. Nobody could see me now. After 15 years alone on the island, I was frightened, and I did not leave my cave for 3 days. At last I had to go out to milk my goats. But for 2 years I lived near my home and did not travel far. I did not fire my guns because I did not want to make noise. I could not forget the footprint. But I saw and heard nothing more, and slowly I began to feel safer. One day, a year later, I was on the west side of the island. From there I could see the other islands, and far out at sea, a small boat. If people have boats, it is easy to come to my island, I thought. Perhaps the footprint was from a visitor from one of those islands. I began to move more freely and even built a 3rd house, a very secret home in a cave. No wild man will ever find that, I told myself. Then one morning I saw something I will never forget. I walked along the shore and found heads, arms, feet, and other pieces of men's bodies everywhere. For a minute I could not think. Then I understood. Sometimes the wild men from the other islands fought each other. They brought prisoners to my island, killed them, cooked them, and ate them. Slowly I went home, feeling very angry. How could people do this? For many months I watched the beaches for smoke from their fires, but I did not see anything. The wild men came and went without me seeing them. I wanted to shoot them all, but there were many of them and only one of me. Perhaps I can kill 2 or 3, I thought. But then they will kill and eat me. Then, on a morning in my 23rd year on the island, I was working in my fields and saw smoke rising. I climbed the hill to watch. 9 men were around a fire, cooking their terrible meal. They danced and shouted for about 2 hours, then got into their boats and sailed away. I went down to the sand and saw the blood of the dead men. The next time they come, I said angrily, I will kill them. Chapter 7. Friday. For the next 2 years, I never went anywhere without my gun. I often felt lonely and afraid, and many nights I could not sleep. One night, a terrible storm came, and I thought I heard the sound of guns far out at sea. The next morning I climbed the hill and looked out over the water. There, not far from the shore, was a ship lying on its side. Quickly I pushed my small boat into the sea and rowed toward it. When I reached the ship, I saw 2 dead men but no one alive. The other sailors must have drowned. I took some clothes, tools, and a box filled with Spanish gold and silver coins. Now I was rich. But what was the use of money? I couldn't buy anything on this island. What I needed wasn't gold, but people. A friend, someone to talk to, someone who could help me escape. One morning, I woke up with a plan. I'll try to rescue one of the prisoners from the wild men, I said to myself. If I save his life, maybe he will help me. I watched day and night for a long time, but for a year and a half no boats came. Then one day I saw 5 boats on the beach. About 30 men had come, and they had 2 prisoners. They made a fire, danced around it, and then killed one of the prisoners for their terrible meal. The second prisoner waited under the trees with 2 guards. Suddenly, the prisoner turned and ran. The 2 guards ran after him, but the others were busy near the fire and didn't notice. The prisoner ran fast like a wild animal, and I saw that he was coming toward my hill. I grabbed my gun and ran down to help him. I jumped out from behind the trees between the prisoner and the 2 wild men. I hit the first man with the wooden end of my gun, and he fell to the ground. The second man came toward me, and I had to shoot him. The poor prisoner stopped moving, frightened by the loud noise. I called to him and tried to show that I was a friend. Slowly, he came closer. Then the first man started to move again, and the prisoner spoke to me. I didn't understand his words, but I saw that he wanted my sword. How happy I was to hear another human voice. I gave him my sword, and at once he cut off his enemy's head. We quickly hid the bodies under some leaves and hurried away. I took the man to my secret cave on the other side of the island, gave him food and water, and let him rest. He soon fell asleep. He was a strong young man, about 25 years old, tall and well-built, with a kind face and a warm smile. His skin was brown, his hair black, his eyes bright, and his teeth white and even. I decided to call him Friday, because I met him on a Friday. When he woke up the next morning, he ran to me while I was milking my goats. He got down on the ground and placed his head near my foot to thank me. I tried to show him that I was his friend. I began to teach him English, and soon he could say his name, Friday, and also master, yes, and no. It felt so good to hear another person's voice again. Later that day, we went carefully back to my first house. There were no boats, no wild men-only blood and bones on the sand. I felt sick, but Friday didn't. He wanted to eat the remains of the dead men. I showed him that this was terrible to me, and he understood. At home, I gave Friday some trousers and made him a coat and hat. He was very happy with his new clothes. I built him a small tent to sleep in near mine, but for a few weeks I always kept my gun close at night. Maybe Friday was still a wild man, and I was not sure if I could trust him. At first Friday was afraid of my gun. Sometimes he even talked to it, asking it not to kill him. Friday learned quickly. Every day his English got better. He helped me with the goats and worked in the cornfields. Soon we were good friends. I enjoyed teaching him, and most of all I was happy to have someone to talk to. Those were the best years I had on the island. Friday and I lived together happily for 3 years. I told him about my adventures and life in England, and he told me about his country and his people. One day we climbed to the top of the highest hill and looked out to sea. It was a very clear day and we could see far away. Suddenly Friday began to jump up and down with excitement. "What is it?" I asked. "Look, master, look!" Friday cried. "I can see my country. Look over there." I looked northwest and saw a long, thin piece of land far away between the sea and the sky. Later I learned it was the island of Trinidad, and that my island lay in the mouth of the river Orinoco on the north coast of South America. I began to think about leaving the island. Maybe Friday wanted to go home too. Perhaps together we could reach his country. But I was afraid. What if his people did not like me? What if they killed and ate me? I took Friday to the other side of the island and showed him my big canoe. It lay under the trees, old and full of holes. "Could a boat like this sail to your country, Friday?" I asked. "Oh, yes," he said. "A boat like this can carry a lot of food and drink. Then we will make another canoe like it, and you can go home in it," I said. But Friday looked sad and confused. "Why are you angry with me?" he asked. "What have I done? Why do you want to send me away?" "I thought you wanted to go home," I answered. "Yes," he said, "but you must come with me. Kill me if you want, but do not send me away from you." In that moment I saw how true a friend he was. I agreed to go with him. We began work on the new canoe at once. Friday chose the tree himself. He knew wood better than I did, and we cut it down. We worked hard, and in a month the boat was finished. 2 weeks later it was in the sea, and we began to prepare for our long journey. Chapter 8. Escape from the island. By now I had lived 27 years on the island, and I didn't want to spend another. Friday and I worked hard to harvest the corn and make plenty of bread. We also dried fruit, salted meat, and filled big pots with water. One evening, Friday went out to find a turtle for food and eggs. Less than an hour later, he came running back, looking terrified. "Master! Master!" he cried. "There's a big ship near the island. Men are coming to the shore in a boat." I jumped up and followed him down to the beach. To my great surprise, the ship was English. But why was it here? English ships never came this way. "Perhaps they're pirates," I said. "Don't let them see you, Friday. We'll hide in the trees and watch." There were 11 men in the boat, but 3 of them were prisoners. Their arms were tied, though they could still walk. The other sailors pushed them up the beach, laughing, shouting, and hitting them. Then some of the men sat down to drink, while others wandered off to explore the island. 2 men stayed behind to guard the boat. The 3 prisoners sat down under a tree nearby, looking tired and hopeless. Quietly, I moved closer through the trees and called out in English, "Don't be afraid, I'm an Englishman. Maybe I can help you." The 3 men turned in shock. They stared at me, perhaps thinking I was a wild man, with my long hair, beard, and clothes made of animal skins. Then the oldest spoke. "I am the captain of that ship," he said. "These 2 are my officers. Last night there was a mutiny. The sailors took my ship. Now they plan to leave us here to die." "Do these mutineers have guns?" I asked. "Only 2, he answered. "They left them on the boat." "All right," I said. "We'll fight them. But if we win and get your ship back, you must take me to England." The captain agreed at once and thanked me warmly. Friday ran back to our house to fetch the guns, while the captain and I made a plan. The first part was easy. The sailors at the boat were not ready for a fight. We shot the 2 guards, and the captain shot another man, the leader of the mutiny, named Tom Smith. Then the captain spoke to 5 others, who quickly agreed to help him. They had joined the mutiny because they were afraid of Tom Smith, not because they wanted to. "Now," I said to the captain, "we must get your ship back. How many men are on it?" 26, he said, "and they will fight hard. They know that mutiny means death if they return to England. But not all of them are bad men. Some will help me if they can." Just then, we saw another boat coming from the ship. 10 armed men were on board. We hid among the trees and waited. The fight that followed was long and difficult, but darkness was our friend. We ran from tree to tree, shouting and making noise. The sailors couldn't see us and didn't know how many men we had. Finally, the first officer called out, "Put down your guns and stop fighting. The captain has 50 island men to help him. We can kill you all." The sailors threw down their weapons. 3 of them went back to the captain's side, and we tied up the rest. Friday and I guarded the prisoners while the captain and his men went to fight for the ship. All night we heard gunshots and shouting from the sea. When the sun rose, the sound stopped. Soon after, the captain returned, smiling. "My dear friend," he cried, "the ship is ours. You shall sail anywhere you wish in her." We hugged each other and laughed with joy. After 27 years, I was free at last. Of course, my good friend Friday came with me. We decided not to kill the mutineers. Instead, we left them on the island to begin new lives. I showed them my 3 houses, my cornfields, my goats, and all my tools. They would live well because of my years of hard work. And so, on December 19th, 1689, after 27 years, 2 months, and 19 days, I said goodbye to my island and sailed home to England. Chapter 9. Home in England. When I finally returned to England, I felt like a stranger in my own country. So many things had changed, and very few people even remembered me. I went to my hometown, York, but both my father and mother were dead, and so were my 2 brothers. I did find the 2 sons of one of my brothers, and they were very happy to know I was still alive. I too was glad to have some family left in the world. After a few months, I decided to travel to Lisbon in Portugal. I had friends there who could help me sell my land in Brazil, and I needed the money. Of course, Friday came with me. He was still my loyal and true friend. In Lisbon, I met the same kind Portuguese captain who had once rescued me and taken me to Brazil. It was wonderful to see him again after so many years. He helped me with my business, and soon everything was settled. I was ready to go home again, but this time I decided to travel by land. I wanted no more adventures or dangers at sea. The journey was long and difficult. We had to cross the mountains between Spain and France in the middle of winter. The snow was deep, and the cold was terrible. Poor Friday had never seen snow before. In his country it was always hot, and he was very afraid of the cold white ground. When I finally reached England, I bought a house and began to live a quiet life. My 2 nephews came to stay with me. The younger one wanted to be a sailor, so I helped him find a place on a ship. After some years, I married and had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. But later, my wife died, and I was left alone again. One day, my nephew, now a captain of his own ship, came home to visit me. He knew that I was not happy with a quiet life. "I have a fine ship, Uncle," he said. "I am sailing to the East Indies, to India, Malaya, and the Philippines. Why don't you come with me?" And so, in the year 1694, I went to sea once more and had many more adventures. Perhaps one day I will write another book to tell the rest of my story. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories rewritten in simple English. Leave a comment below and tell us, what would you do if you were alone on an island for 27 years? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.